Oh, hey there, and welcome to the weekly part 2. So if you haven't listened to the weekly part 1, I highly recommend that you listen to that first. In that part 1, I tell you about a new program that I'm introducing called the weekly. I tell you about the concepts, the ideas, and why the weekly is really important for coaching and self-management and self-care and self-coaching. And I invite you to join me in 2026 to my weekly program based on the reasons why I created it just for you. So in this session, I want to talk about coaching. I want to talk about its exquisiteness of what it offers. The first overall concept that people who have coaching understand differently from people who don't is how optional unnecessary suffering is. So if you think about your life, if you think about there's happiness and there's joy and there's greatness, and there's also pain, and there's struggle, and there's frustration. And that's normal. Perfect. That's a beautiful life. But so many humans layer on top of that yin and yang of life, positive and negative life. So many people layer on top of that unnecessary suffering. Suffering that wrecks you emotionally and prevents you from achieving, prevents you from evolving, and can, if you let it, ruin your relationships. And so that piece, I think, is my mantra. That's my goal, is to help people, humans, reduce unnecessary suffering by using the tools of life coaching. And in order to do this, you have to truly understand that suffering can only be caused and created in the mind, in the brain. Consciousness is what creates suffering. Now, consciousness is also what creates your life. It creates your joy. It creates all of your pleasure, all of it, right? But when you have consciousness, you have the ability, the skill, the habit of creating unnecessary suffering. And the reason this is because of the way that we've evolved, because of the way that our brains have evolved. And the most important thing to the brain will always be and always has been survival. Now, this isn't a bad thing, right? We want to survive. We want to maintain consciousness. So when you have a brain that's completely focused on survival, it's going to be looking on purpose for reasons to suffer. It's not going to be able to let that most important part of its evolvement, it's not going to be able to let it go. So it's so important when you are coming into this life and you have these two parts of your brain that you understand how they work. You understand that your brain has a propensity to seek out danger, seek out reasons to feel bad. You may end up feeling way worse than you need to if you don't understand that this is your brain's natural knee-jerk reaction. You may think that there's something wrong with you. So many of you think that there's something wrong with you, but you just have a brain that has a survival mechanism in it. And so there's a way to think about your thinking that's going to help alleviate this. And the best way I know is first to understand what the motivational triad is. And what the motivational triad is, as a reminder, is that your brain is always seeking pleasure, as much pleasure as it can possibly get. It's always seeking to exert as little energy as possible in order to conserve itself for survival. And it's always looking to avoid pain and negativity. Now, think about this. When you have a brain that is constantly seeking pleasure, constantly avoiding pain, and think about that. When your brain is avoiding pain, it means it has to be looking for things constantly that may cause it and avoiding it, right? So it's bringing that up. And when you think about this motivational triad, you may be like, what's wrong with that? I can be lazy, I can be hedonistic, and I don't have to ever feel pain again. That's the goal of the brain, right? But great. Except that when you live a life like that, especially when you're able to live a life like that because of modern day conveniences, you actually create a cycle of misery. So it's almost like the motivational triad keeps you hidden away from danger, but you're also not living your full, true capacity of your life. And so I suggest that what we do in a very thoughtful and a very calculated way is the opposite of the motivational triad. We actually seek out pain in ways that will help us achieve our goals, but we figure out how to manage it properly. We enjoy the true pleasures of life and we avoid all the false pleasures that modern day conveniences offer that suck us away from our truly authentic lives, and that we practice exerting energy on purpose towards the goals that matter to us. Now, I'm going to teach you all about false pleasures and how the brain doesn't know the difference between a true pleasure and a false pleasure. And our consumerism culture is built around giving you as much false pleasure as it can in exchange for money. And so I created all of these tools and built all of these tools around helping you do this, helping you outsmart your most primitive brain and enjoy your most sophisticated brain, which is your prefrontal cortex, right? You have this survival brain that is overlaid by the way that we evolved with your prefrontal cortex. Now, the main tool that we use for this is called the model, the self-coaching model. And it's just a model that we use for looking at and exploring your own life. And what the model says is that there's only 5 things in the world that could ever exist. Only 5 things in your life that are ever going to matter. 5 categories. So the first one is circumstances, and these are the things outside of your control that exist in the world. Things that happen to you that you don't create, that come onto you, right? And the things that you don't have direct control over. Other people, the weather, politics. And the second category, which is your thinking, which is your thoughts, which you actually have 100% control over. If you're thoughtful about it, and if you're intentional about it, and if you're deliberate about it, and you understand that your thoughts create your feelings, you will have 100% control over your thinking. And then the third thing is your feelings, which are just vibrations that you process in your body, and you're going to have your whole life, and you're going to have a balance of them, positive and negative. The next category is your actions, the behaviors that you take in the world, and everything you do in this world, everything you take action on is going to create the 5th category, which is a result. Those are all 5. And if you understand those 5 things and you understand how they all work together, you will have a key to reduce suffering. You'll have a key to achieve your goals. And you'll have a key if you want to blow your own damn mind with impossible goals. Now, let me tell you why that is. If you think about the concept of desire and you think about all the things you want in life, it's going to be based on everything that you've been exposed to, right? So what you believe is possible for you and what you actually desire in your life is based on what you've been exposed to. So if you dream a little dream, it's because you've been exposed to little ideas and little dreams. And if you dream a big dream, it's because you've been exposed to bigger possibilities and bigger belief systems. Your consciousness has been expanded. And so one of my goals in coaching and being your coach is to expose you to big dreams, big ideas, big possibilities for yourself so you can start thinking about them. Now, many people don't want to live a big dream. They don't want to dream a big dream. They don't want to think about the impossible dream because the minute they do, they experience pain. Now, why is that? Why is there pain associated with dreaming big? It's because as soon as you state an impossible dream, as soon as you state a big dream for yourself, your survival mechanism brain jumps in. Your motivational triad, whose job is to exert less energy, avoid pain, and seek pleasure, is going to fire up. And it's going to say, this is a terrible idea. Go back in the cave. This is going to expose us to danger. It's going to expose us to pain. It's going to rob us of pleasure, and it's going to require work. And I, primitive brain, do not want to do any of those things. And so let's go back into the cave and keep our goals very small. And then we won't have to do any of those scary things. We won't have to confront our motivational triad that's completely outdated for what we are now capable of doing. We won't have to access the higher part of our brain that can think about the future, think about goals, and achieve the impossible. And so my goal as your coach is to point this out to you throughout your life and throughout your model and help you see that the main crux of the issue here for all of us is how we think about what we think about. And there's a process to that, right? We have to first understand, where do our thoughts come from and what are we thinking? And if you've never done this, if you've never done a thought download, if you've never been exposed to eavesdropping on your own thinking, your thinking is going to be pre-programmed. And it's going to be pre-programmed by your survival brain, by your childhood when you were powerless. That's when all your thoughts, all your beliefs are created, is when you are at your most powerless. If you don't develop a consciousness and change your thoughts, those are going to be the main thoughts that are running your life. And this is why when you look around, most people have the exact same life that they've always had. They have a rinse and repeat life that doesn't confront all that motivational triad. It seeks a lot of false pleasure. It avoids a lot of pain by staying in the house, afraid of everything, afraid of change, and it exerts only as much energy as it needs to stay alive in a mediocre life. But if you start questioning those thoughts and you start considering, you can do differently. So remember, your thoughts create your feelings and actions. So when you start thinking different thoughts, you're going to have different feelings. You're going to have different actions. Ultimately, you're going to have different results, whether they're big, new, fantastic results you want in your life or smaller ones. And so you have to consider in a very important way what you want to think, what you want to believe. And you have to think about what you believe about yourself. And you have to think about what you believe about your life. Now, this is much more challenging, and you might realize, because if you've never thought about what you think about, if you've never explored your own consciousness, if you never questioned your own brain, you're actually going to think that your thoughts are just observations of reality, that that's just how the world is. That's just how your life is. You won't know how to question them. You'll think your thoughts are the truth. Your thoughts are real. But when you start with coaching and you start wiggling some of those realities, you will start to blow your own mind. Let me give you an example. A thought you might have, a thought many of you have, is, I'm not good at that. That's real, right? You can prove it, whatever that is, okay? And you might be like, no, Brooke, that's just really the reality of it. I'm not good at that. Look, I can prove it. I've never been good at it. I've always been this kind of person. This is just something I'm not good at. Now, remember, if that's a thought that you've let your brain think over and over and over again, you're going to feel that way. You're going to feel incapable, right? You're going to have a thought, I'm not good at that. You're going to feel incapable. And when you feel incapable, you're not going to be able to produce. The feeling of being incapable does not increase capacity. It reduces it. So if you're feeling incapable, you're not even going to try. You're not even going to put yourself out there. You're not even going to create any new kind of result. And that same ass result will prove that you're not getting any better at it, that you're still bad at it. And it will prove the original thought that you're not good at it. And so our work is first to become conscious of the thought. And for me, this is easy as your coach, right? Because you're coming to me with thoughts that you think all the time, but they're all new to me. And so I can point them out to you. And this actually applies to people who've been doing this work for years, including myself. I need someone else with a different perspective to be able to point out my thoughts to me. Constantly going in there and looking for thoughts, because as your circumstances change, your results change, your thoughts change, that survival brain will always be there. It will always be producing a level of doubt that you have to keep exploring constantly. And once you bring all of those thoughts to the surface, then you can make a deliberate choice, deliberate conscious choices about whether to keep the thought or to change it. And you can see the effect of those thoughts on your life in real time. I can help you see it, how this thought is affecting your life. Then you can learn the process, introducing new ideas, new thoughts, new beliefs into your brain, and then practicing them over and over and over and over again, at least weekly. We are going to reiterate them. And this is why the weekly is so useful, right? Because I'm constantly introducing to each of my clients new powerful thoughts to believe, new powerful things to consider. When you want to understand what your thoughts are, all you really have to do is look at the results you're creating. And one of the things that I've been able to do is create extraordinary results in my own life. Results that I did not think were possible. wonderful results. And those results all came from new thoughts that I chose and thoughts that I let go. And so I'm able to share the thoughts that worked for me. I'm able to share how I chose them, why I believe them, how I continue to believe them. And then you're able to borrow and adopt those thoughts of mine. But also I'm able to help you come up with your own thoughts and to practice them. And when you practice those thoughts, you're going to practice new ways of thinking, new ways of feeling, new ways of acting, ultimately new results. And at first, you're going to be clunky at it. At first, it's going to be a little confusing. But after about the 5th call, after about the first month, if you attend all the calls of listening in to the ideas and the concepts and the application and the coaching, you're going to start getting it. You're going to start having it be secondhand to you. And you're going to start catching yourself thinking negative thoughts. It's going to become uncomfortable for you to think negative thoughts. Whereas now you might have a bunch of negative rhetoric going on in your brain that just feels normal. But the more you show up to the weekly, the less normal that will feel, the less acceptable it will feel to think negatively about yourself or about your life. In a way that is so constructive, you're going to be able to see your own negativity. And when you start to get it through the learning, through the repetition, through the application, you will start suffering less. The unnecessary suffering will fade away. Now, there will be suffering in everyone's life. That's the 50-50 of life. But the unnecessary suffering will fade away. When I first started coaching, I was introduced to this concept. It was called clean pain and dirty pain. And I loved this concept because it really showed me that pain is part of life and it's necessary and it's something that we want. We want to be in pain over painful things. But it also showed me that there's a lot of what they call dirty pain that we don't want to be in pain over. We don't want to feel bad because we think we're ugly. We don't want to feel bad because we think we're incapable. We don't want to suffer because we're constantly judging and berating ourselves. That's unnecessary pain. That's the dirty pain that we want to release. And so you can read about the model. You can watch videos about it on my site. You can listen to the podcast about it. To get yourself a good introduction, you can listen to this podcast again to get a sense of it. But what will really ingrain it, what will really make it powerful for you in your life is the weekly repetition of seeing it in action and then applying it to your own life. And as soon as that starts to wane, as soon as during the week you start falling back into old negative thinking patterns, feeling patterns, action patterns, we'll have a brand new call for you. And if you lock in and you listen to that call, it'll bring you back into the space of consciousness, of overcoming your own motivational triad and creating courage, capacity, motivation, discipline to create the life that you want. Now, I'm going to end by giving you my own impossible example. For those of you who don't know about my own work and my own goals and my own impossible accomplishments. When I first started doing this work and I first started understanding that your thoughts create your feelings and create your results, I started teaching this. And people said, okay, if this is true, if whatever you think about creates ultimately your results, why don't you think you want to make $1 million? And I love money and I think money's fantastic. So I thought, hey, this is not a bad idea. I think I will. And so I did. I created a model. So I took the self-coaching model and I created a model that had really powerful thoughts about making $1 million, powerful beliefs and powerful feelings. And because I was having powerful thoughts and I was having powerful feelings, I took a bunch of very powerful action. And I created $1 million in my life and in the result line of my model. And I blew my own mind. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can really use this to create what I want. Now, what happened was there was a cognitive dissonance where the thought patterns that I had had my whole life about what was possible started to be threatened. And your brain doesn't like to be threatened. Your brain likes status quo. Remember that. It likes to conserve energy. It likes to keep things the same. And once I felt that cognitive dissonance, I realized I was onto something. I was like, aha. And I said to myself, okay, if I could put $1 million in that result line of the model and create that, why not $10 million? Let me test that out. And so I did. I put the $10 million goal in the result line. Now, a lot of people criticized me for using money as a way to demonstrate the model, but I actually think it's perfect because it's one of those things that's measurable. It's math. It's not subjective. I had used the model to stop over drinking. I had used the model to lose weight. I had used the models to improve my relationships, but those results were much more subjective than making money. And so I really wanted to demonstrate the power of the human mind through this model with math that you couldn't argue with. And so, someone wouldn't be able to say to me, well, did you really do that? Did you really make that? Yes. This is the amount of revenue that I produced, and that's a real number, and that's cash in the bank. And so when I said $10 million, I meant exactly $10 million in the bank. And when I first made this goal, I didn't believe it at all. I thought it was impossible. 10 million is a ridiculous amount of money. 1% of the people in the United States have $10 million. 1%. And let alone make $1 million in 1 year. And I was a life coach, right? It wasn't like I was an investment banker making $10 million or trying to make $10 million. I was a life coach. So I put that in the result line. I didn't believe it. And I started to apply this work to myself, thinking at the time, maybe I'll make 2 million. Maybe I'll make 3 million, right? Aim for the moon. Maybe I'd grab a star. But I had to change the way I was thinking. I had to change the way I was feeling. I had to change the way I was acting, and I had to change the results. And what it did for me is that constant commitment to changing the way my brain was thinking helped me to overcome my own emotional triad, which means I started seeking out the difficult, challenging, painful things and getting better at doing that. And I avoided a bunch of false pleasure and I exerted a lot of energy. And I started exploring the thoughts that would prevent me from being able to create something so incredible. And as you've probably guessed, once I made 10 million with the model, I blew my own mind. And I decided, okay, let's put 100 million in there. And as you will learn, and as I will talk about on the weekly, 100 million was never really real in the beginning either. It was an astronomical number that I put out there to see how I could evolve towards it. I had read this book called The Last Word on Power, and she told me to pick a goal that I would never really be able to achieve, but it would evolve me and call me higher. And it called me to do more, to think better, to be more creative. And so that's what I did. $100 million. But the more I worked on my mind around that goal and the more I practiced that goal and the less thoughts I had contradicting it, the more belief I had for it and the more action I took towards it. And ultimately, I created it in my life. In fact, I created a situation that was double that amount within 1 year. Double. 200 million, not even 100 million. And if 100 million is the most impossible thing you've ever heard of, which it was for me, then 200 million was insane. And that year, in addition to that, we had a $50 million revenue year. And I was offered $200 million for that year. So it's actually $250 million for the year. And the most important lesson, the most important part of the story is not even the money. Because I have to tell you, once I had about 10 million, I was set for life, right? And so more money wasn't going to change my life that much. But what it did do is it changed my identity. It changed my self-concept. It changed my view of the world. It changed what I believe. It changed what was possible for me, my capacity, my capability. I believe so much in myself, and I demonstrated it to all my students and to all the people who followed me. We blew our own damn minds with the amount of impossibleness that we created. And it wasn't just me. So many of my students did the same thing. So many of my students came along for this ride and blew their own damn minds when it came to weight loss, when it came to their relationships, when it came to their careers, when it came to making money, all of it. And the best part of it is all the strategic byproducts that were created from having the goal, because it taught me how to manage my mind, how to think thoughts, how to process emotions, how to embrace the pain of growth, how to enjoy the pleasure of achievement and accomplishment, how to overcome the desire to climb in bed, hide in the cave, and not exert energy towards my dreams. And as I stand here on the other side of that work, I am astonished. It didn't just apply to money, which I think is the most obvious example that people see with me, but it also applied to my relationships with myself, with my family, how I feel and think about who I am. It has made me feel like a high capacity, courageous person and a very solid, complete human being in my ability to move forward and accept challenges and overcome obstacles. And that is delicious. And I know how to do it, and I know how to teach it, and I know how to coach it, and I know how to share it, and I know how to demonstrate it. And so I don't know if there's anyone better to teach you this work and help you apply it to your life. I don't just know how to teach it and coach it. I've lived it. I demonstrate it. There's a lot of people out there who want to teach you something they have never done. But my life has always been about trying to make myself into the best version of myself. And as I learn the skills of doing that, share that with everyone I love, including my clients. And since I've had that goal, since I had that 100 million that turned into 200 million, my goals, my perception of what is possible, and especially as it applies to money, because here's the thing that's crazy about money. And this is just kind of a side note. Once you have $100 million, it's very easy to make another $100 million. That's what's so crazy. Once you have $1 million, it's so much easier to make another million than it is to make the first million. So $100 million multiplying over and over and over again it'll make your mind explode, right? And again, you don't need that much money. Nobody does, right? It's fun to have money and I love having money. But what it does is it shows you that your mind is so much more powerful than you ever imagine. And one of the best things for me that money's been able to do is create the freedom to make the exact decisions I want to make in my life, to have the things I want to have in my life and to not have the things I don't want to have in my life. And I want that for everyone. I want that level of power and freedom. And that's self-power, right? That's power over your own life in whatever degree you want it. And so I don't want to retire away from that. I want to teach that to everyone. I want to teach that concept. There's too many people still in my life who haven't ingrained this work in their brain, who haven't practiced it enough so they can live it effortlessly. And one of the ways that I know how to do that for you, one of the best ways that I know how to do that for you is by having a touch point with you weekly. And that's why I created my program called The Weekly. So I hope you'll join me in there starting in January so you can learn how to do a little bit of this or a lot of this for yourself. You can sign up by going to thelifecoachschool.com/weekly. I'll see you there. Bye.